I came here because of him. It's not because it was convenient or easy. I'm not being paid to be here, but he deserves to be honoured.
Yeah. Look, I know that you were aware of this attack. You've been travelling and you were in Eastern Europe earlier today. And it was my producer that called you to invite you onto the programme and broke the news to you that he'd gone.
I learned it from GBNews. I'm not going to be able to do this without being emotional, but this guy, he deserved nothing other than the respect. 38 years he did for his constituencies, and I'm going to pull myself together because he deserves to be honoured. Yeah. It's not about politics. It's about somebody who, as you said yourself and Adrian said, actually wanted to do something for the human race. He deserves to die for it, really? Yeah. Now, I think actually part of it is because, maybe I shouldn't put motives into this, but because politicians are easy targets. When it comes down to it, David Amess did nothing wrong. His crime was to actually be in the public eye. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say now, I know you want to ask me some questions. Was he loved? Yeah, he was loved. He was respected. And he leaves 5 children behind, none of whom deserved to get this news. And he was a young 69. Just during the ad break, I asked you whether he would have retired at the next election, and you're saying absolutely not. There's no way he'd have left Parliament, and he would have deserved, on top of the knighthood, a peerage. And I think everybody would have assumed that that's where he was. And he would, I mean, he was a young 69, but he would ultimately, most likely, have become the father of the House, the oldest member of the House of Commons. I think so. Father of the House means that you're the longest-serving politician. Ah, that was I thought it was just an age thing. So no, it's years. It's miles on the clock. It's miles on the clock in Parliament. So if you're there for, say, 45 years, and somebody else is there for 44 and a half, which would never have happened to me or to you if you started now, then the person with 45 years gets it. Yeah. The thing about David, I was never very party political. I actually went to his constituency and did a debate with him. There was no political reason for me to do it. It was because he actually wanted to energise his young people and so forth. I wasn't there to try to get people to vote Lib Dem when I was, I think, still a member of the party. I'm not sure if I am now or not. But I did it because David Amess asked me to. And he was so beguiling. People who don't like Conservatives didn't like him. But people who actually liked human beings loved him. And I'm using emotional language because it's an emotional day. You're right, I've just actually come back from somewhere else in Europe. And when I left that country, Bulgaria, I heard that he'd been stabbed. When I landed, I heard that he'd been killed. Yeah. And that isn't news that I wanted to hear, and it's not news that his constituency wanted to hear. Let's remember, these are human beings. Sometimes I actually blame the media, and I slightly feel that way right now. I might be more circumspect tomorrow, but the media need to recognise that politicians are human beings. Well, I agree, and I've actually spoken up for you in the past. I think that you were unfairly vilified, particularly surrounding the nature of your departure from the political front line, the so-called expenses scandal, which for me is a cover for the fact that MPs were not paid enough and are not paid enough and were essentially given a blank cheque by the House of Commons authorities to put any expenses through in lieu of a pay rise. And yet, you all sort of carried the can for that one. But also the public vilification, the press intrusion, and verbal attacks in the street from members of the public, and, of course, now a new phenomenon, online attacks. I found out that Gabriella Irimia, the cheeky girl, my former partner, had lost my child on the front page of the News of the World. I found out that I'd lost a child on the front page of the News of the World. Now, I don't think that's right. And you were an MP, therefore fair game. Oh, apparently. Not a pop star, not a cocaine-snorting comedian, a member of Parliament. And apparently that was OK. Apparently it was OK for me to find out that somebody had died in my family on the front page of the media. Now, David Amess has actually died. He's a member of Parliament, well, he was, and he actually died. And I don't think if he'd been an accountant, this would have happened. A bus driver, if he'd been somebody doing security, doing your job or my job now in public affairs, he died because of his job, because he was a member of Parliament. Whether you like politicians or not, whether you agree with the Tories or not, there's no justification for what's happened. I can sit here and be polemical about this, and I slightly apologise for my emotional start to this discussion with you, Mark, but he was a friend of mine. And there are 650 people who are doing the best they can, and most of them do it for the right reasons.
And he wasn't the sort of negative stereotype of a Tory backbencher. He wasn't a sort of, you know, an Etonite. He hadn't been to Oxbridge. He wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He was a real man, a man of the people. He
worked his way up. I wasn't best impressed with Margaret Thatcher, but she recognised him as basically a working class boy made good, like you said. He also was a carpetbagger. He left Basildon to go to Southend to carry on holding a seat.
There were boundary changes, weren't there, which sort of essentially eliminated him from that seat.
And the Lib Dems won that seat eventually, but well, actually just after that. Then
back in the days when Lib Dems won seats.
The funny thing was that he actually asked Tony Blair, "What plans does the Prime Minister have to visit the constituency of Southend-on-Sea?" And he said, "I've no plans to visit that constituency, and until the last election, I suspect neither did the honourable member." It was a very funny moment.
It's a great
I'll
line.
tell you what, the guy was a lovely bloke, and he's a loss to the human race, not just to politics.
And of course, and to his family. And he showed just how much a backbencher can do. You were a very prolific backbencher, and you managed to be very high profile as well, and he achieved a lot in almost 4 decades without having held a ministerial post.
He spent 38 years serving this country. That meant he had his full pension, so that wasn't his motivation. Secondly, he had the ear of the Prime Minister and the former Prime Minister as well. I think we saw that in one of the clips you had with David Cameron. When you get into politics, you can decide to do it for the money. Most people don't, and you made that point, and I make that point as well. You can make an awful lot more money for a lot less work in the private sector. Fundamentally, somebody like David Amess, he chooses it as a vocation. I think he would have stood again. He probably would have been the father of the house. But more than anything, most politicians in all parties do it for the right reasons. And no one deserves to die for it.
No. So you entered the House in which year?
In 1997.
97.
He'd already been there for 14 years.
Yeah, that's it. So he came in 83. So he was something of a veteran at that point.
And he taught me.
Did he really?
Yeah, he taught me. Because if you're not very tribal, and I never was very tribal, then you make friends across...
You weren't tribal enough.
That's probably why I lost my seat.
You'd still be in the Lib Dems if you were more tribal.
Yeah, in which case I'd have had no future, but I don't want to wash my dirty laundry.
I think you'd have fallen out with them over climate change, frankly. So that was a non-starter.
I have to say this, there is no climate emergency, but I'm not sure when David's
Well, we're looking forward. My audience is salivating at that debate, which we'll be having very shortly.
We are
looking forward to that.
Going to have the debate, and where would David have stood on that? He's a pragmatist.
Yeah.
He didn't play the game. He actually played it straight. And so I had great debates with him. He invited me to have a stand-up debate, stand-up row with him in front of his own school children in his constituency, knowing that maybe sometimes I can be quite eloquent. But he did that because he wanted them to have the debate.
He chose a worthy opponent in order for it to be a better spectacle.
He chose me. Well, I hope that's right. He chose me because he was my friend. That's all it was.
That's
and
remarkable.
because he cared more about people than he cared about parties.
Did you see him or speak to him after you left the Commons?
Yes. I used to go into Parliament a lot. It's been difficult recently because of COVID. He would always be down there, have a chat, have a pint in the famous Strangers Bar.
Yeah.
"Oh, Lembit, how are you? What are you doing?" He was generally concerned. Lots of politicians go, "Are you okay?" And I go, "Well, not really." "Oh, that's fine." With David Amess, it was different.
Was he almost an independent? I mean, I know he was a Conservative, but, you know, he was against fox hunting, and you know, he didn't toe the party line for 38 years.
He and I are almost ironic opposites. I was in favour of allowing fox hunting. He was against it. I would describe him as a libertarian and slightly to the right of economics, and I probably am the same way. But here's the point, Mark. Somebody like him cares more about people than about parties. And he was tolerated for his eccentricities in politics by his party, because basically he was a damn good politician.
Was he underused?
Yes, he was, but he would have been hard to control. That's why he didn't get to be a minister, because he wouldn't toe the line. So his strength was his weakness.
So was he something of a maverick, therefore?
Yes, and there's a great phrase, the Maverick's motto, let chaos reign, then reign in chaos. So when there was chaos, he came to the fore. But more than anything, we learn from David's 38 years in Parliament that he cared more about doing the right thing than doing the right thing for him. And that's why he never became a minister.
Lots of emails coming in, and by the way, plenty of complimentary comments in your direction. But a few emails are coming in about protection for MPs. Michael, thanks for your email. Michael says, hi Mark, such a sad day. Our MPs deserve proper protection. This day has shown we are all one, whatever our political views. We are all one. Britain is the home of democracy. We will never surrender to terror. Some are suggesting that MPs should have 24/7 protection. Is that what you would want if you were currently in the House?
No, I was Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and a newspaper published a picture of my house, and I could have been killed as a result. And it wasn't unconnected to the same newspaper that revealed to me that I'd lost a child on the front page. Despite that, I don't think that we should have 24-hour, 7-day protection. What we should have is respect for politicians, because we don't have respect for politicians in the media. GB News, fair play, you give people a say, and sometimes people disagree, but you don't deride politicians. The media, particularly the newspapers, in my view, they think it's okay. It's fair game. It's open season to attack politicians. I draw the line when people die because they try to serve the public. Now, the best thing is not that you need that protection, but you don't create the circumstances where politicians are exposed to that threat of death. How do we do that? If we had half an hour, we could talk about it.
But I agree with you, and that echoes very much the comments of my monologue at the start of the show, which is that we must be respectful to all MPs. We don't all elect them, but they do represent all of us. And I think that for too long we have vilified MPs in an almost cartoonish way. And as you said, we've seen the really dark side of that now, that sort of toxic atmosphere. It's just not on.
If I can say this, Sadiq Khan and I have differences of view. He's an OK guy. Boris Johnson and I have differences of view. He's an OK guy.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer, I disagree with how he runs his party. He's an OK guy. I used to share an office with Ed Davey, who's leader of the Lib Dems. He's an OK guy. None of them deserve
I've never heard
to
you
live
be so nice about a Lib Dem before.
because they're human beings, Mark.
Yeah.
And they've chosen a career which is risky.
Yeah.
It shouldn't endanger their lives. And what we've seen today is a very, very decent human being losing his life for serving the country. And that's never on.
Now, Lembit, I know you're busy being a filmmaker internationally. Can't wait to see that when it comes out. But do come and join us on the panel really soon, and let's have that climate debate. And I can only say that I'm so sorry for the loss of your friend today, and I know how devastated you are, and it's the measure of you that you've been able to come into the studio. You wanted to do it to pay tribute to David Amess, your pal.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.